Hey guys, it's Sam, and welcome to Caps Lock, a podcast designed to help you live bigger, better, louder, and longer. Before we get started, I just want to thank you guys for listening and for giving this a chance and for coming here in pursuit of your best self. This is a space where we are going to grow together, and I hope that it helps you go forward confidently, unapologetically, and with purpose. It's time to live your life in Caps Lock. If that mission feels aligned for you, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and let's dive in. Today, I want to talk to you guys about my journey with sobriety because it has become a really powerful experience for me. And I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes or however long this is trying really hard not to sound preachy because that is genuinely not my intention. I am not here to judge anyone. I want you to do what's best for you, what makes you feel happy and healthy. I'm just here trying to share my own experience. And something that I want you to think about, and the reason I just said I'm not here to be judgy is because this next thing I'm going to say can sound really condescending. And I want you to genuinely know and believe that's not my intention. It's just kind of an exercise that I think I want you to do or to think about a little bit while you're listening to this. If you catch yourself feeling indignant or wanting to justify something, or if you're like ticked off by this episode, I encourage you to explore why and where that comes from. I used to have a similar experience or feeling when I would listen to people like talk about their choice sobriety back when I was drinking. And I think it often comes from a place of having a slightly weird or sensitive relationship with substances. Because in my experience, people with totally healthy relationships to substances are typically really supportive and non judgmental. And if anything, like kind of indifferent to other people's relationships with those things. So if you catch yourself feeling like indignant or feeling like you need to justify things as a result of this episode, I think it could be a good opportunity for reflection. And I wish that back when I was feeling that way, someone had kind of checked me and put me in that mindset. So I just wanted to say that before we dive in. We're going to have three sort of sections in this episode. We're going to talk about the physical implications of drinking alcohol, the emotional ones, and then at the end, we'll do some like sort of strategies, tips, tricks for, how I have made my journey with sober curiosity more enriching. I do feel obligated to share some of the physical effects of drinking alcohol because even though we do know about so many of them at the high level, like it makes your skin look bad, it makes you gain weight, it ruins your sleep, brain fog, whatever else, I think it's important to get specific about the impacts of our behavior in an effort to be more intentional with them. Like if you're trying to grow, you should know what impact every behavior you demonstrate is having on your life and on your experience. So let's start here. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Mark Hyman. If you don't already, you should check out his work. I think he's really smart. And he shared on his show recently that the World Health Organization says, and I want you to lock in right now, there is no safe consumption of alcohol for human health. There's no safe consumption of alcohol for human health. The International Agency for Research on Cancer actually classifies alcohol as a group 1 carcinogen. And if you don't know what a carcinogen is, it is a cancer causing substance. And it's in that category alongside things like tobacco, radiation, arsenic, diesel, and formaldehyde. Guys, alcohol is in the same category as arsenic and formaldehyde. This is the highest risk group of carcinogen. And the National Cancer Institute says that even if you're just having no more than one drink per day, of course, in addition to people who binge drink, which, by the way, sidebar here for a second, the bar for binge drinking is surprisingly low. It is 4 or more drinks for women and 5 or more drinks for men in one sitting. And I think back to all the times in college when I had 4 or more drinks in one sitting. Really makes you think. Anyway, people who have no more than one drink per day and people who binge drink have a pretty dramatically increased risk of cancer. Even one drink per day can increase a woman's risk for breast cancer by 5 to 15% compared to women who don't drink at all. That just blew me away because every time we make the choice to drink alcohol, every time we drink alcohol, it's a conscious decision and it can increase your risk of breast cancer by up to 15%. Now, excessive alcohol consumption, which we know is a lot more serious, that is, again, though, the guys, oh man, I'm reading my notes. The bar for that is pretty low too. 8 drinks per week for women is considered excessive alcohol consumption. I just like when you're in college or on a bachelorette or like on a vacation, like how many times are you having 8 drinks in a week? And if you do that over time, it can lead to significant brain damage through various mechanisms, including the Journal of Neuroscience says it causes literal structural changes in your frontal lobe, which messes pretty badly with your higher cognitive functions and damages your memory, attention span, and decision making abilities. And it can also trigger inflammatory responses in your brain, leading to things like literally dementia. I mean, it leads to cognitive decline and neurodegeneration, and that's the kind of stuff that causes dementia. So now for some like less terrifying ones, but that will still like show that the way alcohol fucks up your day to day. Hackensack Meridian Health says that just one drink can decrease a woman's sleep quality by 24%. One drink, that's all it takes. And the same study actually showed that more than one drink for women, as little as 2 drinks, can actually fuck up your sleep quality by 40%. Your sleep quality is decreased by almost half if you have 2 glasses of wine at a little girl's dinner. That's crazy to me. Drinking heavily, even just one time, can also cause heart arrhythmias, stroke, and or high blood pressure. And drinking a lot in a few days, like some of the occasions I mentioned earlier, like bachelorette parties, vacations, party weekends, whatever. Drinking a lot in a few days can build up fat in your liver. And if that is done repeatedly over time, that can increase your risk of developing long term conditions. So, like diabetes, up to 50%, high blood pressure by up to 40%, kidney disease by up to 40%, and heart disease by up to 50%. You guys, this is so crazy to me. These stats actually, like, we know alcohol is like not great for us, but these really blew me out of the water. And they are very cut and dry and they are backed by science. And I just want to say that kudos to whoever's job it was to be the marketing team for alcohol. That is so crazy. And if you are the person who marketed alcohol for the first time and you are looking for work, please come market my podcast. So listen, that's all I'm going to say on the physical implications of drinking alcohol. There is so much more research out there if that wasn't convincing enough for you or if you just want to learn more. So now we're going to move into the emotional implications of drinking alcohol. And I think that is best explored through personal experiences and anecdotes because they're so nuanced. And everyone's experience is completely different, but I do think there are some common themes that kind of resonate with everybody. So, the remainder of this episode will be pretty vulnerable, and there are parts in here that I think require a trigger warning. So, I will share a trigger warning when I get to that part. But I just want to give you a heads up that I'm going to be really honest in here. I'm going to share some things I've never shared with anybody before. So, I hope we can all approach this episode with respect and compassion and empathy for other people who might be just going through something. I had a pretty normal relationship with alcohol in high school and college. Obviously, as with any other teenager, it got me into trouble a couple times, but nothing all that crazy. So when adulthood came around and everyone was doing things like dry January, I just like had no particular feelings about it one way or the other. One year I decided to do it not for any particular reason other than it was like something to do. And honestly, I was young. I think I felt like it made me like seem interesting and healthy. So it was like more based on the external image of myself that it was projecting and validation from other people than anything else. It like was not about my health. And then this past year, I did a detox from refined sugar and processed carbs. That was really interesting. I highly recommend for anyone who's just like feeling kind of sluggish or like wants to do a little reset. I felt amazing. I during the process of that, I also limited alcohol. I really wasn't drinking very much during that time. And if I was going to drink, I limited it to 1 glass at a time. And it would only be red wine. And there are certain red wines that have less than a gram of sugar. You can like Google it. That's what I did. Now, both of these times when I did dry January and then again when I did my little detox, I felt physically amazing. I was sleeping better, my skin was glowing, my body was snatched, but it never really stuck. Ultimately, FOMO would always get the best of me, and I would fall into my normal drinking habits again, which again was not that crazy. Like it mostly meant wine or cocktails at dinners out with friends and like drinking when I went out at night on the weekends. But I think the reason it never really stuck is because I'm a very emotionally driven person. Every long term decision I make and stick to is ultimately based on how I feel. So the physical stuff like sleeping better and glowy skin was never enough for me to like change my habits in the long term because I was having fun with my friends and I didn't want to feel left out. So my emotional attachment to drinking alcohol was just stronger than my physical aversion to it. So this is the part where I get really vulnerable and it's kind of an embarrassing story and it's something I'm still kind of working through emotionally and this is where I'm going to issue the trigger warning. So if you've had any weird experiences with substances, and you want to fast forward, totally feel free. Earlier it was actually this past summer, so it wasn't even that long ago. I went away with a bunch of friends. We went on vacation for a holiday weekend, and we had a reservation at a club, and the table was under my name. And I was kind of the person who had like brought several of my friend groups together to make this weekend happen. And so I just kind of felt responsible for all the different parties and like wrangling everyone together. So when we went to this club, I was like, I'm not even like gonna drink that much because I just wanna be under control. Like I wanna have the gang under control. I don't wanna like embarrass myself at the club. I wanna know where my credit card is at all times. So I made a decision that I was just gonna drink rosé. I wasn't even drinking hard alcohol. And I drank a decent amount, but I was not out of control when suddenly I felt this sharp onset of absolute panic. I'm talking like physical reaction, like my heart was racing, my throat like tightened up, and then I start sweating. And I'm not talking about like I'm perspiring, like upper lip dab dab. I'm talking like dripping. My hair is like sticking to the back of my neck, sweating. So as soon as I feel this, I know something is wrong. And if you've never had a panic attack, God bless you, but it almost kind of felt like panic attack symptoms. And panic attack like, if you've ever had a real panic attack, you know that you genuinely feel like you're gonna die, and it is one of the most terrifying bodily experiences that you can have. So, I'm looking around and I don't really see my friends, but I see some of my, like, acquaintances who are here at the table with me, and I turn to one of them, and I go to ask for help. And you guys, I can't get through the sentence. Like, I start saying something, and by the time I'm halfway through the sentence, I cannot remember how it started, and I cannot remember where I'm going with it. That was hands down, I think the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I genuinely thought I was having a stroke. I have never been in a state where I could not finish words or like say a sentence. And it was so scary because I was like aware of it as it was happening. Like I was so present in the sentence that like I knew where I was at the moment, but I couldn't go backwards or couldn't go forwards with my brain. So I literally couldn't even ask for help. By that point, it has become clear to me that my friends have, like, completely disappeared. They're, like, in line for the bathroom or at the bar or something, and I literally called them 34 times, you guys. If you look at my call log, it's, like, missed calls left and right of me calling them and nobody's answering, and I just can't find them anywhere. So I'm literally having a full-blown, like, I'm tweaking. I end up figuring out how to string a sentence together, and I turn to one of the guys who's at my table, and I ask him for help. I say to him, like, I think something really bad is happening and I need your help. And he, sweet boy, grabs my face in his hands and he looks into my soul, so deeply into my soul. And he says, "Oh my God, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You just did too much." And that's when it clicked. I didn't do drugs that day, just to be clear, not intentionally. Like I said, I was trying to drink rose and be pretty chill. And suddenly I started putting together all of the feelings I was experiencing and all of the slowness of brain and realizing that somehow there were drugs in my system that I didn't want to be there. So at that point, I'm a little less scared about like the physical experience I'm having, I'm like, "Okay, it's not a stroke, it's just, like, something else." But then sets in the feeling of, like, "Oh my god, like, did someone do this to me? Like, is someone trying to hurt me?" Ultimately, thank you to the power of groupthink, we, like, all kinda put our brains together, and we established that it was an accident, that someone had spiked a drink with recreational drugs, and accidentally it had been passed to me, and I imagine that person was pretty pissed off because they probably paid for those drugs. Um, so that took a big edge of the fear off because I no longer felt like I was really in danger. But then I start sobering up and, like, since I hadn't been that, like, drunk in the first place, and obviously I stopped drinking once I realized what had happened, I was just stone cold sober, and I was left with this, like, pit in my stomach of, like, embarrassment and anxiety and, like, "Oh my god, am I, like, so weird? Was I acting, like, so bizarre? Like, this is so humiliating." It was so bad. It was, like, so rock bottom, embarrassed, and pit in my stomach that I ended up leaving the whole weekend. I literally just woke up the next morning at, like, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I got my ass back to New York because I was just feeling so, like, icky. So fast forward a couple weeks later, I, like, kind of still had no interest in drinking, but it was my friend's birthday, so I decided to have a couple drinks, and honestly, it just, like, didn't hit the same, and that's when I kind of started to wonder if it, like, ever would hit again. So I go to therapy and I end up telling her the story of what happened on that holiday weekend. And it kind of led into this conversation about my broader relationship with alcohol as it relates to this particular experience. And it made me kind of start to consider the topic. And that's why I wanted to share it with you guys today, because even still in this moment, like, I'm kind of it's kind of a half-baked understanding of my own journey that I'm on right now, because 'cause I'm still, like, figuring it all out, but I wanted to share these feelings with you while they're still fresh so that I can be as honest and authentic with you as possible. So, I just like a disclaimer, I'm not in recovery. I don't experience alcoholism. So, if you think that that's something that you're experiencing, I do encourage you to seek professional counseling. That is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. I think if you even have the self awareness to ask yourself that question, I think that's really brave. And I think you are probably the kind of person who has like a growth mindset. So, now we're going to go back in time a little. So, bear with me because it's all going to come full circle, I promise. I have an anxious attachment style, which was a really sweet and nice parting gift from one of my first serious boyfriends. When I was in that relationship, I would sometimes express feelings about things that he was doing. For example, his constant contact with his ex girlfriend, or the way he would make fun of me in front of all his friends, or the way that he told me what I could and couldn't wear when we were long distance and I was in college. And every time I floated my feelings, it would turn into a huge fight. And sometimes we would break up. And then when he came back, he would apologize and cry and send flowers and write handwritten letters. And sometimes there would even be like teardrops on the handwritten letters, like so manipulative. And then we would get back together. But then the next time I talked about my feelings, we would literally just do the same song and dance over and over. And that is how I came to internalize that if you share your difficult emotions with the people you love, they will get angry with you and they will abandon you. I left this guy when I graduated from college, but for years thereafter, I did not have the self worth or the self love or the security or the confidence to acknowledge or express my uncomfortable feelings because I was afraid at that point that my friends or boyfriends would like hate me for being difficult or needy or accusatory. So I always was swallowing my feelings. It's kind of ironic because at this time, I also always joked that I, like, had super healthy coping mechanisms because one of my major outlets was fitness. But I think looking back on it, like, I don't even think I was coping at all. And the fitness was more like a stress outlet because I had all this, like, pent up stress from carrying these emotions and this resentment around. And then sometimes, and rarely, but once in a blue moon, when I drank alcohol, it would all come flooding out. And for context, this has happened maybe 3 or 4 times in my entire life. But If you have ever been reduced to drunk, yelling, and crying years worth of feelings and resentment at someone, you know that you are the one who carries that guilt and shame around for the rest of your life. Like, I literally, it's been years since the last time that happened, and I still cringe when I think back to those times. So there was a minute there, and I think it was after the last time I had one of those experiences that I actually asked my therapist if she thought I had a problem with alcohol. And she definitively said no, but I still kind of felt like something was off. And so I didn't really believe her until she told me that she thought it was time to unpack my emotional suppression problem. When you're sick, a lot of times you treat your symptoms. Like if you have psoriasis, for example, you might get steroids and it'll make your skin stop like itching and flaking. But a course of steroids is only like 2 weeks long. So when you stop, the psoriasis comes back with a vengeance until and unless you address the root cause of it. My point is, in order to heal, I didn't need to stop drinking. I needed to learn how to process my emotions. So for years now, I've been working on that. And in the last like year ish, I've gotten so much better at it. I'm now much better able to identify uncomfortable feelings, to experience them fully, to process them, to share them with the people I love in healthy and productive ways. And now I understand that if people leave as a result of that kind of conversation, then it's a reflection of their discomfort with themselves and with their own feelings, and that's just, like, not my person anyway. But I think part of the reason that I've gotten so much better at that in the past year is because this is the year that I stopped drinking. You'll remember that I shared earlier that I'm a super emotionally driven person, and many of my decisions in life are guided by my feelings, and I'm already, baseline, prone to anxiety in my neutral state. And alcohol has just an enormous impact on anxiety. So, hangxiety is a super common term. I'm sure you've heard it before. And anyone who's ever had more than 2 drinks at a time knows how anxious you feel the day after drinking. So, I'm going to double click a little bit on why and how alcohol causes anxiety. So, first things first, alcohol is basically poison, right? Like it tastes bad. You have to detox from it. It causes cancer. If you drink too much of it, you puke. Sometimes you'll even die. There are other things that also have those effects if you drink them, and they include carpet cleaner and gasoline. And we certainly are not drinking those. So it takes your liver about 8 hours to detox from alcohol, and detoxing interrupts the normal functioning of your nervous system. And that leads to feelings of anxiety and like jitters. Second thing, we talked earlier about how drinking messes with your sleep. And when you don't get enough sleep, your body actually releases more cortisol. And we all know that's a hormone that's associated with stress. So, sleep deprivation can also increase activity in the brain regions that are linked to anxiety. And the third thing, we all know that alcohol causes dehydration. And I actually didn't know this next part before, and I think it's really interesting. Dehydration can actually cause anxiety. It increases the production of cortisol also, but it simultaneously causes you to have physiological responses like dry mouth, increased heart rate, dizziness, difficulty focusing. And those mimic anxiety symptoms. And that signals to your brain that it's time to panic. So, when I'm not drinking at all, my anxiety levels in general are so much lower. And it actually gives me the space to acknowledge and process and communicate negative feelings when they come up because they don't feel overwhelming or cause feelings of panic when I try to address them. If I were to drink right now, it's very unlikely there would be some sort of issue because I've learned how to process my emotions. But in the past, after one of these emotionally taxing alcohol fueled experiences, I would often stop drinking for a couple weeks because of those low vibration feelings like fear, embarrassment, or in my opinion, this one is the lowest, shame. Oh my God, that is like the lowest feeling you can possibly have. And if you've ever felt it after a night of drinking, especially when you were like upset or emotional, you probably also stopped drinking for a couple weeks. But when you do things that come from a place so low, they're just not sustainable. Your why has to come from a high vibration feeling or place inside of you, like a place of love, for it to have lasting power and be a truly endless source of motivation for you. So at first, my current like sober journey was coming from the place of anxiety and embarrassment I felt after leaving that nightclub. But as I've continued to work on myself, my why has completely transformed into a place of absolute love for the life I live and the person I'm becoming. Since I stopped drinking, I have found that I am more deliberate. I am more like intentional in everything I do. I'm able to form deeper connections with people that come from a really authentic place as opposed to like that superficial, like, oh, we're just drunk and like now we're besties. Obviously, I feel physically so much better. I am so passionate about learning, especially in this stage of my life. I feel like I'm just a sponge absorbing information. And I feel like my ability to learn and retain information has gotten so much better since I stopped drinking. I have more energy and motivation. I am less depressive. I feel like my hobbies and experiences are more enriching. Through doing this work on my emotional well-being, I have genuinely just become so aligned and I feel so happy in my life that I don't even want alcohol because I don't want to alter or miss or fuck up or risk or forget or change a second of my time on this earth because we know how precious it is. We know how short it is. And I just feel like when I'm drinking, I'm like missing out on that. So that is where I'm going to leave it on the emotional journey. And if that resonates with you, I would just love to hear from you in the comments or shoot me a DM. I just think there is like so much people don't talk about in that space. And I hope that anyone who listened to that part like really feels seen if you can relate to it. Because I think people like honestly are probably embarrassed or ashamed to talk about things like that. And I just feel like my purpose on this earth is connection. And so if that resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. And then we're going to move now into the last section of the episode. And these are some things that I have been doing that have helped to make this sobriety journey easier for me and better and more enriching. And I made a video about this online. So if you've seen it, this is a little bit of a double click, but has some bonus information as well. And if you didn't see it, then keep listening. And if you want a place just where you can get it in kind of like quick tidbits, feel free to go visit my page and you can like save that to refer back to it later. Okay, I have 6 things here. Number 1, when you go out, hold a seltzer with lime. Guess what? It looks exactly like a vodka soda or a tequila soda. So nobody's gonna bother you or ask you any questions or try to peer pressure you into drinking. Side note, I think those people are lame for doing any of those things, but it's like inevitable. Every time you go out and you're not drinking, people are like, "Why? Are you pregnant?" Or like, "Haha, like, oh, that's so weird. Why don't you just take one shot with oh my God, like shut the fuck up. Like, I don't want to drink. Why do you have such a problem with that? You need to reflect on yourself." But anyway, if you just like don't want to be bothered with any of that, literally just hold a seltzer with lime in your hand. I think it's a great tip and it has worked for me on so many occasions. Number 2, when you're at a restaurant, order something besides water when your friends are like placing their drink orders. And there are 2 kind of reasons for this. Number 1, I like to feel like I'm included. So like if my all my friends are ordering fun drinks, I'm gonna order something too, but like mine's gonna be an unsweetened iced tea. Cool. And then the second reason for this is because of those losers again who like this has happened to me so many times now since I stopped drinking. Someone will be like, "Oh, you can't cheers with water." What? Like what a douchey thing to say. What purpose does that serve other than to exclude your friend? Like, I literally can't think of a reason you would say that. Like, maybe it's rooted in superstition or tradition or whatever. I don't care. If you are saying that, all it does is put your friend who's not drinking in an uncomfortable position. But again, this is a tip for you if you just like don't want to deal with people like that in the first place. Sometimes it's better to just head it off. Number 3, do activities that are not centered around alcohol. This is super important to me anyway because I just like don't think alcohol is a good connector. I like to make my friendships based on values, like shared values that I have with other people. And like sure, sometimes alcohol is like a social lubricant and can like get the ball rolling on a conversation, but I have found that doing activities that are not centered around alcohol has deepened my friendships and relationships, and it's also introduced me to other people who have hobbies and interests besides, like, going out and drinking, which I just, like, don't think that's enriching as an activity. Number 4, if you are out and you feel, like, kinda tempted to have a drink, but you, like, know that your future self, like, doesn't wanna be drinking and you'd be happier if you abstained, then every time you feel, like, tempted to have a drink, put a little piece of gum in your mouth and get to chewing. I have no idea why this works, but it genuinely does. It keeps your mouth busy. It's also, like, disgusting to chew gum and have a cold drink at the same time. There's something about cold liquid that literally just takes, like, the stickiness and chewiness out of your gum, and suddenly you're chewing on, like, a rock, and it's so gross. Anyway, that really works, and I've heard from other people who tried it out after I told them that it worked for them, so I really like that tip. Number 5, have an accountability partner. This could be someone that you go out with who's also not drinking, or this could just be somebody that you, like, text when you're out and other people are drinking and you wanna, like, stay true to your mission and your goal. And if you don't have a person who you feel comfortable sharing this journey with, then A, get new friends, but B, I think your fitness tracker is a really good replacement for this. I wear a Whoop, and Whoop gives you the opportunity to they have like this journal feature in the app where you can actually mark off every day if you had alcohol the day before, how many servings, what time you consumed it, and it really forces you to reflect. And I'll tell you what, there's no worse feeling than being like, I'm not gonna drink tonight. And then the next morning, you're like shamefully entering all the vodka sodas you had into your tracker. So that's a good hack if you don't have an accountability partner, but highly recommend having a person who you can like talk to about this stuff and connect with if other people are drinking and you wanna like stay on track. And then number 6, come up with new coping mechanisms or stress reducers. I genuinely get energy from being around other people and from talking to people and connecting with people. And during COVID, I was down so bad, especially in the beginning. And I found myself leaning into this habit that I had never had before, where every day at 5 p.m., to break up the time between, like, okay, this is my work time and then this is my personal time, I would shut my laptop and immediately pour a glass of wine. And like, I just wasn't behaving in alignment to my own values or who I am on the inside. And over time, during COVID was actually a good time to do this for me. Um, I came up with new coping mechanisms and stress reducers that just like were different than drinking. And I think they actually worked better because, again, band-aids don't fix bullet holes. Like if you're really stressed out and upset about something, having a glass of wine is going to take the edge off, sure. But then you sober up and your problems are back and you have the anxiety. So the real stress reducers I have found at least are things like meditation and exercise and talk therapy. Like those are real coping mechanisms. And once you start doing those, you will not feel like you need alcohol anymore to reduce your stress. So, listen, you guys, everyone's journey is different. And like I said, I'm never going to tell anyone what to do or look down on them or judge them for your choices. If you love to have a drink here and there, that is totally fine with me. And honestly, I'm happy for you as long as it's not impacting your health or safety. Side note, also, as long as it's not impacting anyone else's health and safety and happiness. Um, but today's episode was really just about my experience. And when I'm not drinking, I feel better. I look better. I'm able to make more aligned decisions. I'm able to be truer to myself. I feel blessed in the sense that I've never needed alcohol as a social lubricant. So I still love going out and dancing and partying, and not drinking doesn't make me less fun if that's like something you're worried about. In fact, I actually think it makes me more fun because I'm just a better and happier person when I'm not drinking alcohol. Um, and this has been a really profound journey for me in the sense that it has really forced me to look in the mirror and do a lot of uncomfortable personal growth. And even though that has definitely been hard at times, I really just love the person I'm becoming. And I feel totally in control of my own happiness. And honestly, I'm really proud of myself. Thank you guys again from the bottom of my heart for giving Caps Lock a chance. If you liked this episode, please stick around for more because we do have some really interesting topics coming up, including doom scrolling, why it's bad for you and how to stop, manifestation, pivoting in your career when you feel stuck at work, cortisol, how to make friends as an adult, and so much more. Some of these will be solo episodes, and others will feature scientists, founders, experts, doctors, and other just very cool, smart people. If there's a topic you want to hear about on Caps Lock, send me a message. And lastly, check us out on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads at Life in Caps Lock. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Leave me a rating or review. These are super important to podcasters. And tune in next Sunday at 8 a.m. or whenever you listen to podcasts for another episode of Caps Lock. Okay, talk soon.